My name is Chloe and I'm 22 years old. 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. My bedroom door flew open. My sister Sarah didn't knock. She just screamed, "You are cancelling that trip. You're watching my kids." Behind her stood my parents, blocking the exit like bouncers. I felt my chest tighten, but not with fear, with clarity. Mum stepped forward and delivered the line that was meant to crush me. "If you walk out that door, Chloe, don't bother coming back." She expected me to beg. Instead, I looked at my packed suitcase, looked at them, and started to laugh. "Before we get into the thick of this, I hope you've got a quiet corner to yourself. If the family is making a racket downstairs or demanding your attention, shut that door properly. It's time for your peace of mind, isn't it? If you want to see a family who treated their daughter like a cash cow finally get the reality check they deserve, listen to this story." It wasn't a little giggle, not a panicked sound. It was a full laugh that made my eyes water. They all stared at me like I'd lost the plot. "You know what's funny?" I said, wiping at my face. "I've been thinking about moving out for months. I just didn't have the nerve. And now you've handed me the perfect excuse, so thanks, Mum." Sarah forgot her sobbing instantly and turned bright with rage. "Get out! Just get out!" "Gladly." I pulled out my mobile and rang Rachel. I put it on speaker, not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because I wanted them to hear that I wasn't bluffing. "Rachel," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "sorry to ring so late. Is that offer of your spare room still on? Not just after the weekend either. I might need a few days." Her voice came through cheerful and certain. "Of course it is. I've got clean bedding and everything. Do you want to come over now?" "That would be perfect," I said. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, traffic willing." It all started about a year ago. Fresh out of university with a business degree, I ended up back in my childhood home on the outskirts of London. I hadn't planned it like that, not really, but life has a way of doing what it likes. The job search didn't take long, thank goodness. Within a week, I'd landed a role at Davidson Marketing. Decent pay, proper prospects, the sort of start you tell yourself will lead somewhere. That evening, over Mum's cottage pie, I told them my news and tried to say it lightly. "I'll stay here for a few months, save a bit, and then get my own flat." The clink of cutlery stopped. Mum and Dad exchanged one of their looks, the ones that always meant the mood was about to shift. Mum put her fork down carefully. "Move out!" Then she went straight to it, as if she'd been rehearsing. "Chloe, you know I can only work part-time at the library because of my back." Dad cleared his throat. "And things aren't great at the factory. There's talk of redundancies." Mum softened her voice the way she did when she wanted something. "We could really do with your help with the bills, and you wouldn't have to pay rent here. It just makes sense, doesn't it?" I stared at my half-eaten dinner, that familiar trapped feeling spreading through me. They had a point, sort of, and they were my parents. That always did something to my spine, made it bend without me noticing. My voice came out small. I suppose I could stay longer. After that, life slipped into a routine. Work, home, bills. Mum made sure dinner was on the table. Dad watched telly, complained about his back, complained about the price of everything. It felt manageable, even normal, until last weekend when Sarah turned up with Dan and the kids. The change in my parents was instant, like someone flicked a switch. "Oh, my precious angels," Mum cooed, scooping up the little one while Dad swung the other onto his shoulders. "Sarah, love, you look wonderful. How are you? Tell us everything." I stood in the doorway and watched them fuss over their eldest daughter and her perfect little family. Watched them hang on her every word about nothing much at all. How the garden was doing. What her son had said that week. Her book club, her plans, her worries. Every detail treated like it mattered. They'd never shown that kind of interest in my life. Not when I got top marks, not when I won an award at university, not when I landed my job. Mum called over her shoulder without even looking at me. "Chloe, be a love and put the kettle on." Standing there in the kitchen, listening to their laughter from the sitting room, I couldn't help thinking how it had always been like this. Sarah was 7 years older than me, and she'd always been the star of our family show. I was the one who did the washing up afterwards. I remembered sitting at that same kitchen table when I was 11, pushing a straight A report across to Mum, heart thumping like it meant something. She barely glanced at it before going straight back to Sarah and her big plans. "That's nice, Chloe," she'd said, waving me away. "Sarah, darling, which universities are you thinking?" Those years were all about Sarah's achievements. Every dinner conversation was her A-level subjects, her open days, her applications. I'd sit quietly, eating peas, listening to Mum and Dad act like Sarah's future was a national event. It got even more intense when Sarah got into university. I still remember that dinner like it's stuck in my bones. Mum had cried, "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. We'll make it work, won't we?" Dad nodded, serious as a judge. "We'll sort it. We'll borrow if we have to. Our Sarah deserves the best." A week after Sarah left, they sat me down for a different kind of conversation. Dad's voice was heavy. "We need to tighten our belts for a while. Things will be tight with Sarah's costs." That's when the gap between us became a canyon. While my classmates seemed to get new mobiles every year, I kept my old one until it barely held a charge. When I needed clothes, it was charity shops and hand-me-downs. Christmas became socks, stationery, practical bits. But Sarah still got money sent to her. "Your sister needs to focus on her studies," Mum would say, tapping away on her bank app. "We can't have her worrying about finances." I learned my lesson early. At 15, I joined every club and competition I could. I stayed up late studying, not just for good grades, but perfect ones. I wrote scholarship essays until my wrist ached because I knew, deep down, there would be no big family effort for me. It worked. I got a scholarship and bursary that covered my fees and kept me afloat. I still remember the relief on my parents' faces when I told them they wouldn't need to pay towards my university costs. Meanwhile, Sarah graduated, got a job down in Brighton, and married Dan, her university sweetheart. Within a couple of years she had a daughter, and then a son not long after. My parents were beside themselves. Their perfect daughter had made a perfect family. After that, Sarah's visits became a pattern. Once a month, usually, she and Dan would show up with the kids, and before I could even say hello properly, Sarah would start arranging her weekend. "Chloe," she'd say, not really asking, "you'll watch the kids while we pop out, yeah? Dan and I never get any time to ourselves." At first I tried to suggest Mum and Dad could do it. Mum would put a hand to her back, sighing, "Oh, love, I can't keep up with little ones for long, and your dad needs to rest at the weekend." So there I'd be, sat on my bed watching children's films for the 100th time while crayons threatened my walls. Sarah and Dan were off having lunch, meeting friends, wandering around shops like they didn't have 2 small children. Mum and Dad potted in the garden, popping their heads in occasionally to ask if I needed anything, as if they were doing me a favour by leaving me to it. I tried to tell myself it was only 1 weekend a month. Just 1 weekend of being the free, reliable babysitter while everyone else got to live. Months passed in that rhythm of bills and babysitting. I almost got used to it. Almost. Then came the phone call that tipped everything over. I was washing up after dinner when Mum's mobile started ringing on the side. I heard her answer, surprised. "Sarah, what's wrong, sweetheart? Don't cry, talk to me." Sarah's voice carried through the kitchen, loud with panic. Dan's company had gone under without warning. He'd lost his job. They couldn't afford their rent any more, and they had nothing put by. "Could we?" Sarah sobbed. "Could we maybe stay with you for a bit?" Mum didn't hesitate for even a second. "Of course you can. Of course. We'll make room." My stomach dropped. I stepped forward, trying to sound reasonable. If they're moving in, maybe this would be a good time for me to get my own flat. You'd think I'd suggested setting fire to the house. Mum stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Chloe, don't be ridiculous. There's room for everyone." "But we're family," Dad said firmly. "We stick together when things are hard." They arrived the following weekend with Dan's car and a hired van packed to the roof. Saturday morning I moved my things into what had always been the box room. The smallest bedroom in the house, barely big enough for a single bed and a chest of drawers. My old room, twice the size, became the kids' room because, as Mum put it, the children need space. From that point on, the house wasn't a home. It was a playground. The kids, 5 and 3, treated every room like it belonged to them. They ran up and down the hallway, shrieking, laughing, slamming doors. Sarah sat on the sofa with the telly blaring, or had long phone calls with her friends, talking loudly about how difficult this transition was for her. "Kids, calm down," I'd call when they barged into my room for the 10th time, scattering my work papers across the floor. Sarah would barely glance up. "They're just playing, Chloe. Don't be such a grouch." After work, all I wanted was my room. A book, a bit of quiet, something that felt like mine. Instead, I got Baby Shark. Through thin walls, the constant thump of feet, Sarah's loud laugh from downstairs, and the steady pressure of being trapped. Dan spent his days supposedly job hunting. Mostly I saw him at the kitchen table scrolling on his phone with a worried face. "The job market's rough," he'd say if anyone asked. "Something will come up." At night, I lay in that tiny bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the chaos that had swallowed my home, and wondered how I'd let it get this far. But every time I thought about bringing up moving out again, I remembered Mum's face, the way Dad went stern and silent, and I swallowed it down. Then the first set of bills came through after Sarah's family moved in. I stood in the kitchen staring at the numbers like they were a joke. The water had shot up. Gas and electric was suddenly a different beast. The food bill was worse because the kids ate like they were growing hourly, and Sarah bought snacks like it was her job. I checked my bank account and felt that sinking feeling. Any hope I had of saving for my own place was being drained away in real time. That evening at dinner I tried again. "So, about the bills," I began, pushing my peas around my plate, a habit I'd had since childhood when I didn't know what to do with myself. "They've nearly doubled. I can't keep covering everything on my own. It's swallowing almost all my wage." Sarah's fork clattered onto her plate. Her eyes flashed. "Are you seriously moaning about money when Dan and I have lost everything?" "I'm not moaning," I said quickly. "I just think we need a fair way to—" Sarah cut right across me. "I cannot believe how selfish you're being. We're going through the worst time of our lives and all you care about is money." "Sarah's right," Mum said instantly. "Family helps family. That's what we do." Dad nodded solemnly. "This isn't the time to be counting pennies." I stared at my plate and swallowed the words that wanted to come out, hot and sharp. "Fine," I muttered. "Forget it." A week later, Dan got a job at an insurance firm. It wasn't as well paid as whatever he'd been doing before, but it was something. I told myself it might settle things, that life might start to settle down. I was wrong. "It's so hard being alone with the kids all day," Sarah started up almost immediately. "He leaves at 8 and doesn't get back until 6. I never get a break." At first it was little requests. "Chloe, can you watch them while I run to the shop?" "Chloe, keep an eye on them while I have a quick shower." Then it became the new normal. I'd come home from work and find Sarah already dressed up, makeup done, coat on. "Oh, good, you're back," she'd say, grabbing her bag. "Dan and I are meeting friends for dinner. The kids have had a snack. They'll need tea in an hour. We'll be back by 10. Weekends turned into my own personal dread. Sarah and Dan would announce their plans on Friday night, as casual as if they were telling me the weather. A shopping trip, lunch with friends, a date night. And somehow it always landed on me. Mum and Dad started disappearing more too, suddenly full of reasons to visit relatives, or pop out for hours, conveniently leaving the moment Sarah and Dan left. So there I'd be, weekend after weekend, keeping the kids from drawing on the walls, making macaroni cheese, dealing with a tantrum because I'd cut a sandwich the wrong way, cleaning up toys that seemed to multiply. By Sunday night I'd be exhausted, the house would be a mess, and I'd still be expected to help with dinner like I hadn't just spent 2 days being a stand-in parent. One evening, after a particularly draining weekend, I finally pushed myself to speak up at the table. "I need to talk to you," I said, setting down my fork. My voice sounded small, but it was there. "I'm really tired. This childcare situation isn't working for me." Sarah's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "What do you mean, isn't working? Are you saying you don't want to spend time with your own niece and nephew?" Mum reached across and patted Sarah's hand, her tone airy and dismissive. "Don't worry, love. It's good practice for Chloe. She'll need to know how to handle children when she's a mum one day. Think of it as training." And just like that, they carried on talking as if I hadn't spoken at all. Sarah chatting about her day, Mum and Dad listening like she was delivering important news, Dan nodding along. I sat there, invisible again, pushing food around my plate. Nothing improved. If anything, it got worse. It was like Sarah and Dan took my complaint as a challenge. They found even more reasons to go out. Some evenings they'd be waiting by the door when I arrived, keys in hand, already halfway gone. "We're trying that new place in town," Sarah would call, breezing past me. "Kids have had a snack. Thanks, Chloe." Weekends became something I dreaded. I'd wake on Saturday with a knot in my stomach, already tired, already bracing myself for 2 days of cartoons, sibling squabbles and sticky fingers while Sarah and Dan swanned about like they didn't have a care. Then came a Wednesday that changed everything. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on a report with my eyes burning from lack of sleep, when Rachel wandered over and perched on the edge of my chair like she owned the place. "Do you fancy doing something nice this weekend?" she asked. "A bunch of us are going up to a snow centre for a couple of days. Quick getaway, leave Saturday morning, back Sunday night. We've booked a proper slot, and we can actually have a laugh for once." For the first time in months, I felt a spark in my chest. Actual excitement, like I'd remembered I was a person. And that brings us back to Friday evening. I was in my tiny box room, packing my hold all, genuinely happy about something for the first time in ages. I just folded my warmest jumper when Sarah appeared in the doorway and stared at the bag like it had personally insulted her. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Packing for the weekend," I said, rolling up thermal socks. "I'm going away with friends." Sarah's face darkened. And then she said it. "You need to cancel." That was the moment something in me finally snapped into place. After I rang Rachel, I spent the next 15 minutes gathering everything I could fit in the car. Clothes, my passport, work documents, anything that mattered. I didn't take furniture. I didn't take things that weren't mine. Just what I needed to not come back. They watched from doorways as I went up and down the stairs. Mum's mouth kept opening like she was about to say something, then closing again. Dad stood by the sitting room door, looking like he wanted the carpet to swallow him. Sarah's eyes followed me with pure fury. Dan hovered behind her, silent. When the last box was in the boot, I walked into the sitting room where they'd gathered. "Oh, one more thing," I said, and I heard how steady my voice sounded. "Since I won't be living here anymore, I won't be paying the bills either. You'll have to work out how to support yourselves." Mum's face drained of colour. "But the bills, the food shop, everything. You'll have to sort it," I said, because it was the truth. Then I turned and walked out the front door, ignoring Mum's suddenly panicked calls behind me. The drive to Rachel's was a blur of adrenaline and relief. My phone kept lighting up with calls and messages, angry ones from Sarah, long guilt-soaked paragraphs from Mum, short, stern disappointments from Dad. I ignored them all. The next morning, Rachel and I went as planned. For the first time in what felt like forever, I spent a weekend doing exactly what I wanted. We laughed like we meant it. We went on the slope until our legs ached. We drank hot chocolate afterwards and sat with flushed faces, talking about everything and nothing, and not once did I have to worry about anyone else's children, anyone else's demands, anyone else's bad mood. When we got back on Sunday night, I opened my laptop and started looking for flats. With my wage no longer being swallowed by my family's lifestyle, I could actually afford somewhere decent. By the following week, I'd found a small but bright one-bedroom flat in a nice area, close enough that my commute to the office was simple. My first week there felt like learning to breathe again. Every morning I woke up to blessed silence. No shrieking down the hallway, no blaring telly, no dramatic sighs from Mum as she made sure everyone knew she was unhappy. I could make a cup of tea and drink it while it was still hot. I could sit on my own sofa in the evening and watch whatever I liked, without feeling like I was stealing time from someone. The messages kept coming, though. I didn't answer the calls, but I read the texts. They followed a predictable pattern. From Mum, "How could you do this to us? We need you." From Sarah, "You're so selfish, the kids keep asking where you are." From Dad, "Your mother is very upset. You need to put this right." They went round and round between guilt and anger, accusations and pleas. I read them all and I didn't reply once. My silence seemed to make them even worse. They weren't used to not having control. They weren't used to me refusing to play my role. After a week of it, I was sat on my new sofa when Mum's number flashed on my screen again. This time I answered. Mum's voice was sharp straight away. "Chloe, finally, I cannot believe you ruined our whole weekend. We had to make excuses all night. Your aunt kept asking where Sarah was, and Sarah and Dan couldn't go because you refused to watch the children and— Stop, I said. Just one word, quiet but firm. There was a pause, like she couldn't quite compute it. I'm done with this, Mum, I said. I'm done being treated like a servant in my own home. I'm done being expected to sacrifice my time, my money, my whole life, just so everyone else can do what they want. I'm done being the one who pays and babysits while being treated like I don't matter. Silence again, longer this time. When Mum spoke, her voice shifted into that coaxing tone I knew too well, the one she used when she wanted me back in line. Love, I know things haven't been perfect, but we're family. We need you. We're struggling without your help. The bills this month. No, I said. I'm done. I took a breath and kept my voice steady. Maybe one day we can have a relationship again, but it'll be on equal terms. No more manipulation, no more guilt, no more treating me like a walking wallet or free childcare. Until then, I need space to live my own life. I hung up. And then I blocked her number. After that, I went through my contacts and blocked them all. Mum, Dad, Sarah, Dan, I blocked them on social media as well. It felt terrifying, like stepping off a cliff, and liberating at the same time, like cutting ropes I hadn't realised were tied around my ankles. Maybe one day I'll be ready to have them in my life again. Maybe with enough time and distance we could build something healthier with boundaries and respect. Or maybe we won't. Either way, I'm done sacrificing my happiness and well-being to meet their endless demands. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of my journey. I know it wasn't an easy listen. Walking away from your own flesh and blood is perhaps the hardest thing a person can do, regardless of their age. For a long time, I believed that family was a magic word that meant I had to endure anything, and that saying no made me the villain. But what I finally understood, standing in that hallway with my suitcase, is that a relationship without respect isn't love. It is simply ownership. I learned that you cannot set yourself on fire just to keep others warm, no matter how loudly they demand your heat. If you are listening to this right now and you recognize that familiar heavy knot in your stomach, if you are exhausted from giving everything to people who only take, please hear me. Reclaiming your life is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. You have earned your peace. You have earned the right to sit on your own sofa, drink your tea while it is still hot, and exist for yourself, not just as a resource for others. Please do not let anyone, not even family, make you feel guilty for choosing your own sanity. It is never too late to draw that line and protect the beautiful life you have built. You deserve to be cherished, not just useful.